Great. Welcome, everyone. Laura, I'll hand it up to you.
Okay. Well, great. Welcome, everyone. And it was so nice to hear a little bit from each of you, a little about your background and what you're studying. So welcome to everyone from ASU Tempe, the different campuses, from ASU Thunderbird. I did start this job in August of 2019, so I have been to Phoenix and Tempe several times, been to the main campus, and I've been to Thunderbird twice as well, as you heard that, one of the folks on the call today has met me. And it was really a great joy to travel. I look forward to getting back to Arizona and seeing you all in person when we've got this pandemic under control. I know a lot of you are doing Zoom school and Zoom events, and that's what the State Department is doing as well to keep us safe. So yeah, I have been based in Albuquerque for the last year. But let me just say what a wonderful group. It's music to my ears to hear all these linguists of such strong interest in languages and foreign studies. And I'm really looking forward to sharing information with all of you. I will try to keep this fairly brief to about 15 or 20 minutes. I'll talk about student opportunities with the State Department, which would be fellowships and internships. And we are fortunate today that one of your classmates, Olivia Parker, has joined us. Olivia has done 2 State Department internships. So she's going to talk for about 10 minutes about her personal experience working with the State Department. So you don't have to hear from just me. And then I'll also talk about State Department careers. And I'll talk about careers for generalists, which is foreign service officers, and also specialists. We have some fields that people don't always associate with diplomacy, such as being an IT manager or a facilities engineer or a security engineer. And I heard that several of you do have a tech type of background. So I guess without further ado, I'll go ahead and share my screen. I'm going to go into a PowerPoint. I won't be offended if people need to turn their cameras off. That's fine. And once I'm done with the presentation and Olivia and I are done, then I'm available to take any questions that you have as well. If there's any question that shows up in the chat, if somebody wants to just shout out and let me know, I'm happy to answer questions as we go along as well too. So again, welcome everyone. Let me go ahead and share my screen and we will get this going. Okay, share screen. This is the one we want. Okay. Sorry, bear with me. I got to take this to the beginning. Okay. So I can see Chan. Can you give me a thumbs up? Can you see the PowerPoint? Can you hear me okay? Okay, yeah. Great. So once again, I'm Laura Gritz. I'm the diplomat in residence Southwest based in Albuquerque. And I do cover New Mexico, Arizona, and El Paso, Texas. My role is to provide information about student opportunities and careers to Americans. It's a wonderful role for me because I've been in the Foreign Service for 20 years and have spent most of my years overseas. And there aren't too many diplomats in New Mexico, Arizona, and El Paso. So I'm very happy to share information about this career with all of you. And I really thank you for joining today. You know what? That's actually my last slide. Sorry, I don't usually have these technical difficulties. That's where we want to be. Okay. After this presentation, if you have specific questions, there's my email address. You could send me a note, dirsouthwest@state.gov. I will be out next week, but if you want to have a phone chat in the next month or so and talk about specific questions related to your background, I'm happy to do that. I have a Facebook page. I'd love it if you would follow that. It's DOS Diplomat in Residence Southwest. We also have a Department of State Facebook page. It's called U.S. Department of State Careers. And we're also really growing our LinkedIn page. So for all of you who are thinking about careers and internships, we're finding that LinkedIn is becoming increasingly popular. And I'd encourage you to follow our page there, also called U.S. Department of State. I have a series there called #SouthwestFS. And it features about 6 different foreign service officers from Arizona, New Mexico, and El Paso. So, you might enjoy checking that out. So first of all, who are we? It sounds like you're a fairly international group. I think all of you are pretty familiar with what the State Department is. We are the oldest cabinet agency, and our role is to serve as the principal advisor to the president on foreign policy. You've probably seen in the news, we have a brand new Secretary of State, Secretary Blinken. So we're excited about his tenure and looking forward to him being able to travel around the world. We are a surprisingly small cabinet organization. There are only 75,000 employees in the State Department. You compare that to the Department of Defense, which has 700,000 civilians. The Department of Interior, the Department of Energy, they're all much, much bigger. We are only 75,000 employees, so we are quite lean. And our workforce falls into four main categories. The first being the Foreign Service, and that's what I am, a Foreign Service officer. We have officers and specialists, and there's about 12,000 of us serving at embassies and consulates all over the world. We also have members of the Civil Service. There's about 10,000 members of the Civil Service. Most of them are based in Washington, D.C., and then also in some locations throughout the U.S. at passport centers. We have a passport center in Tucson, for example, or maybe at a visa processing center or something like that. We have a lot of positions for eligible family members. These are spouses of members of the Foreign Service, and so they're working at our embassies and consulates as well. And then actually our largest category of employees is locally employed staff at overseas missions. We have about 50,000 foreign nationals who work at our embassies. So you can imagine it costs a lot of money to send an American diplomat overseas. And so we're going to try to hire people from the host nation as much as we can. First, because we rely on their language skills and expertise to aid us serving as political advisors or public affairs assistants or consular assistants. We also have a lot of jobs for drivers and different support staff within the embassy. So any position that doesn't require a security clearance is most likely going to be filled by a local national from the host nation. And this photo here is me in Afghanistan with an Afghan local national who I worked with very closely for a year. There was a highly contested election in 2014. Some of you may have been following that. So he would read the news in Dari and I would translate it into English. We would sit and work together, sometimes at midnight or late into the night, to get news reports, and those would be sent back to Washington because the White House was following that. So really one of the bedrocks of the State Department is we work very closely with our employees who are from the host nation. And that's been one of my favorite things. Just a tad bit about me. I am a career Foreign Service officer. I joined in 2001, so I've got almost 20 years of service, and I've had 6 overseas assignments. My first was in Thailand. I hear obviously a strong Asian interest from all of you. And that was really a fantastic experience to serve in Southeast Asia. I did study Thai and learn Thai, pretty tough language. It's tonal like Chinese. I never made it to China. During the time that I was there, we actually had, what was it called? SARS. So we weren't allowed to travel for about a year. So I wouldn't call that a pandemic, but I've been there before when it comes to these COVID things. So I spent my 2 years in Thailand. I've also been to Vietnam. I've been to Cambodia several times, to Burma, to the Philippines, and I've been to Laos. I was surprised to learn that Lao and Thai are about 80% similar, so everybody could understand me when I went to Laos. So that was great. And yeah, it was a wonderful experience. I look forward to getting back to Asia someday. My second tour was Zambia in Southern Africa. Then I went to Afghanistan, where I served twice, each time for a year. I served as the public affairs officer in Iceland and as the public affairs officer in Norway. So kind of went in a Nordic direction. And this photo here is of an exchange that the US government sponsored in North Norway. The ladies in the yellow are from Arizona, are Navajo. And then the ladies in the red shirts are members of the Sami indigenous people, which are indigenous people from North Norway, North Finland, northern parts of Russia, and Sweden. And the goal of this was to conduct a cultural exchange performance. And together they realized how many shared values they had, such as respect for the earth and respect for traditional ways of life. One of the Sami women came from a family of reindeer herders. So the two groups of performers really put on a fantastic performance. And it was an honor that the US government funded that travel and that I was able to go and speak at that event as well. I've also had a couple of assignments in Washington, D.C., course, that's not as exciting as being in the Foreign Service, but that is the center of where policy is made. And so those have been very interesting and career beneficial as well. So as I mentioned, there are a lot of different paths to success in the State Department. And so with all of you being a mix of students and fellows and folks who are in the workforce already, I think there's something here for everyone. I'll talk about student programs, Foreign Service Officer, and then some of the Foreign Service specialties. And I put a note in the chat here in the lower right corner. Definitely encourage everyone to go to this website, careers.state.gov. When I joined the State Department 20 years ago in the prehistoric times, we didn't have internet sites and great access to information. You had to write somewhere and get a booklet sent to you, and it was all very cumbersome. So take advantage of the internet. Oh, we have a cat joining us. Sorry about that. There's tons of information at that site. And there's also an app. It's called DOS Careers, capital DOS Careers. And that's got all kinds of information there as well. Also on the careers site, in the upper right corner, you'll see a button that says sign up. And so I would encourage you to just enter your email, basic information, and check the boxes of what fields you're interested in. And that will help us stay in touch with you and send you information that applies to your interests. Promise we won't sell that to anyone, and we won't send you any advertising either. Signing up there is especially important because when I start to be able to come back to Arizona and I hold events, I can send out invitations through that system, and that way I'll be able to find you when I come back, when I have a coffee or if I have a talk or something like that. So let's talk a little bit about student programs. The most prestigious student program we have is the Pickering and Rangel Fellowship. Some of you may have heard about this, and actually 4 Arizona State University students got Pickering and Rangel Fellowships this year, which is a big change. We're very excited about this, and I give all credit to the students. You also have a fantastic scholarship center there that helped folks with their applications. And it's really exciting that out of 90 fellowships, 4 of them are going to be from Arizona State University. So Pickering and Rangel is for seniors. You apply in your senior year, quite early in the fall. You are applying for a 2-year graduate fellowship in a field related to the Foreign Service. And after completing that, then you would have a 5-year work commitment to the Foreign Service. So I like to view that as a positive. You get a funded graduate school fellowship, and you have a guaranteed job for 5 years after that. The fellowships are quite similar. The only reason they have different names is that Charles Rangel was a member of Congress. And so the first summer internship with this fellowship is on the Hill, whereas the Pickering Fellowship, the first summer internship, is with the State Department. But both programs have a second internship that takes place at an overseas embassy, as long as this pandemic ends. And then everybody joins the Foreign Service as a Foreign Service officer. So please take note of these sites if you are a junior now and think that you could apply this coming fall and you're interested in going to graduate school. I would encourage everyone to apply for both. They really are not that different, and the applications are exactly the same. So there's no reason to apply for one and not the other. They're nearly identical. You do need to be seeking admission to a full-time, normally not online program. We understand that everybody is online now. You do need to have a 3.2 GPA, and they don't require any background of study abroad or anything like that, but it certainly doesn't hurt. The more languages you have, the more international things you've done, the more that you can show why you're interested in the Foreign Service, why you'd be a good fit for the Foreign Service. That's going to make a stronger application. As far as the benefits, it's up to $42,000 annually. And although we say $24K for tuition, the Pickering and Rangel programs have arrangements with what we call partner schools. And they are schools like Harvard, Georgetown, George Washington University, where once the $24K is paid, they waive the rest of it. So it's essentially tuition free. And then you get $18K for an academic stipend, plus these 2 funded summer internships. As I mentioned, the application is pretty cumbersome. You have to write a personal statement, an essay. You do need to show some financial need. You do need to get letters of recommendation, proof of US citizenship. So if this sparks your interest, if you're thinking of going to grad school in a year, or if you would like to apply for this 3 to 5 years from now. We have had people who graduated and who went to work for a couple of years and then applied for it. That's fine too. Just bear in mind that it is a pretty thorough application process, and you want to work with some mentors or the ASU Scholarship Center, to review your statements and essays and make sure you've got the strongest possible application package together. And the young man here is CJ Aragon. He went to University of New Mexico, graduated from the Tufts Fletcher School, and just joined the Foreign Service last July, and he will be leaving in June for his first assignment in Nepal. I think we have someone in this group who speaks Nepali, so maybe you'll come into contact with CJ someday. So that's the Pickering and Rangel Fellowship. I'm happy to answer any questions about that. Okay, let's talk about internships. There's Olivia with her superhuman abilities to fly in front of the Capitol. I'm just going to go over these briefly, and then I'm going to turn it over to Olivia so she can tell you a little bit about her experience. We have two kinds of internships in the State Department. One is the U.S. Foreign Service Internship Program. This is a paid internship program. I will say, honestly, it's not a very big program. Right now, there are only about 40 slots a year. If you've been following the news, we have asked Congress and we've gotten support to get more paid internships. We're not there yet. We are hoping that that will happen because we certainly understand it's really hard to take a summer internship in DC or overseas if you don't have any funding. So this paid program is out there. It offers 2 summer paid internships, one in Washington, DC, and one at an embassy overseas, again, if the pandemic allows. And the application window is usually in the early fall, like around September or October. It is only open for about a week. So definitely want to keep an eye on that if you're interested in it. We have unpaid internships as well for undergraduate and graduate students. You just need to be a returning student. So a graduating senior, you would need to be going on to graduate school. We have them in the fall, spring, and summer. Most of them are in the summer because people are available. We see a lot of fall and spring interns using their internships to get credit. If your school allows that, then you just work with your State Department supervisor to devise a work plan. I have supervised interns who got 3 to 6 credits during their 10-week internship. That's really up to your school. And again, those are 10 weeks long. You need a minimum GPA of 3.0, and again, some references for that. I will mention that our application date is a bit earlier than other organizations. It's about 9 months in advance, which probably seems like longer than other organizations. The reason for that is the interns we select do need to get a security clearance. So we build in about 4 to 5 months for people to get a security clearance with us before you're actually able to take that internship. And then finally, I just want to mention some of the study abroad opportunities that are funded by the U.S. State Department, by the U.S. government. And I'm sure you have a scholarship advisor on your campus. These are all great opportunities to see the world, to study languages. Gilman Scholarship funds, you can do an internship overseas or foreign studies. That's for anyone on a Pell Grant. Critical Language Scholarship is for some of the languages that aren't as commonly studied by US students. And I think a lot of you on this call fit into that. Chinese, Korean, Tajik, the languages that we really need to have more young people in the US studying those and build up a core of people who know those. The Boren Scholarship and Fellowship is also to study foreign language overseas. And of course, the Fulbright is America's flagship exchange program. We have foreigners who come to the US on a Fulbright scholarship, and then Americans can apply to take a Fulbright around the world. These are all great opportunities, and any of these would help improve your chances of getting into the State Department, of having a foreign service career, and would also give you an opportunity to live overseas, to study a language and see how you like it. Okay, so I want to go back to these internships, and I think I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen so that we can see Olivia, and let's hear a little bit from Olivia. So I came to Arizona State University several times in 2018 and 19. Olivia and I did a live stream. We did a couple videos. We had a lot of coffee. We had a lot of fun. I missed you, Olivia. I haven't seen you for a year, but eager to hear about how your internship went last summer. And I'm sure your colleagues are eager to hear from you as well. Okay, so I'll go ahead and stop talking. Do we have Olivia on the line? Are you there?
I'm here. Yeah,
okay, over to Olivia.
Well, thank you so much, Laura and Tim, for the opportunity to speak about my internships. Due to the due to the coronavirus, I actually am able to talk about what it's like to have an in-person internship and a virtual internship. So like Laura said, I was part of the United States Foreign Service Internship Program. So I spent my first summer in DC 2019 and then my second summer virtually. The interesting thing I will say about the Foreign Service Internship Program specifically is not only is it paid, but you do get 3 weeks of like crash course training into working at the State Department, what diplomacy even is. You do a whole 3 weeks with your entire cohort, specifically being taught by other diplomats. We have guest ambassadors come in and speak to you. So you get kind of this 3 weeks of preparation before you go into your 7 weeks at the internship. So that is kind of one thing that makes it a little different. And of course that they cover housing and everything while you're in DC and overseas. So my first internship in DC, I worked in consular affairs. So like Laura said, there's 5 different tracks that you can take in the department. So I was able to work in 2 of them. So my first year I was in consular. I was really on my feet a lot of the time. I worked from 9 to 5 and I was constantly doing visa runs. So I would help kind of organize people's visa paperwork. So I'd run down to what we call Embassy Row. So all of the other embassies around the world, they have one station in DC. They're kind of all lined up. So I'd run there. I was able to use my French and Chinese occasionally. If I went to an embassy where they were speaking French, I'd try to use it and communicate with them. And everyone was really helpful, and they tried to help me. And I organized just travel for diplomats. I would make a lot of calls to different embassies, attend lots of diplomatic meetings, probably about 3 to 4 a day. So that is the great thing about being an intern and having security clearance, is you're able to come and attend any meeting that you see that's happening. There's always at least 8 to 10 meetings happening during the day. And usually your boss will be more than happy to let you run and attend it. You can just hear about current political affairs that are happening, meet some ambassadors, get some networking skills enhanced. And of course, it was before COVID, so you had the opportunity to like go to happy hours after work with other foreign service and civil service officers, meet more people, and like I said, just work on your networking skills. And that was really the first summer. And the great thing too is it's just such rewarding work. All of my folks for the cohort, we all worked in different offices, and even though the dynamics were completely different, everyone just felt like they weren't just an intern, they were part of the team. They had a lot of responsibility, but it wasn't too overwhelming. And we were just able to produce really rewarding work. So my second summer, I was in a regional bureau. So there's management bureaus and then regional bureaus. So I was able to be stationed in the public diplomacy office of East Asian and Pacific affairs, which was great because I was really able to hone in on my Chinese skills and kind of enhance them as far as using it in a diplomatic field rather than in a culture or a history field that I was doing in class. I was part of the strategic communications team, which meant that I was kind of overseeing media that was being produced on different accounts, such as like Twitter and Instagram and Facebook from embassies around the world. They tried to specifically put me for Chinese embassies and consulates. So I would actually take some of the posts that they were making, translate them into English, and then kind of send a big draft every day, and it would go up the chain. And actually, our old Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, did read a lot of our work about 3 to 4 times a week. So these interns, including myself, we were being noticed. Like I said, really rewarding work. I started to organize meetings with ambassadors around the world. So that was kind of one interesting aspect of being virtual, because even though, you know, time differences were off and we couldn't meet in person, we were able to get in contact with diplomats that were stationed all over the world, that were still stuck at these different cities. And so we were able to find a time that worked and be able to network with them, ask questions about their experiences, rather than trying, you know, to find someone that was just in DC that we could meet face to face. So it was kind of an advantage. What else? I wrote something down here. Oh yeah, that we organized meetings with over 40 foreign service officers and civil service officers. But if you have a language, especially a critical language, the internship did provide a lot of opportunities, like I said, for translating, for talking with people in that foreign language. So it was a really nice opportunity that I hadn't been able to have before. I'd never been able to have an internship to use my Chinese before. So that was really a great experience. And one thing I did want to mention that's on the State Department website, I believe if you go, there's an internship handbook, and I would highly recommend going to it because they actually have a big booklet where they've listed over 100 majors, and then all of the offices, or at least all the bureaus that are in the State Department, and then they kind of check where this major is used most often, and also the language. So that's just one thing I would highly recommend going to, because a lot of people think that, you know, you have to be majoring in international relations or public policy to be able to find a job within the department, but it's not the case at all. You know, languages obviously are highly looked at, and really any major. There's even a part that says no major, and there's a bunch of offices that that have spots for that. So I would highly recommend that. And that's really the big part. I just want to kind of talk about really quickly just some of the pros that I got from the internship. So one, whether it is this specific one or if it is an unpaid internship, hopefully the pandemic won't change anything, but you get to live and work in DC. You get to live and you get to go every day into the State Department building. And like I said, just meet so many different officers. And you get to expand your networking, just expand your network and hone in on your networking skills. You get to really improve your research skills and your leadership skills, because like I said, they treat you like one part of the team. And sometimes, especially during summer, if you happen to get a summer internship, a lot of officers will use that time for vacation. And so another reason, there was a time where I was in charge of a department or a little office that usually has about 6 people running it, and I was left in charge for 2 weeks. And so, you know, they give you a lot of responsibility, but of course you always have people there to support you. But that is what produces the rewarding work. And again, it's just a great opportunity to open doors into an international field. You're constantly meeting people that have lived in these cities that you've dreamed of going to or working in, and you get about their experience. And sometimes you realize maybe that's not exactly a lifestyle or a culture I was wanting to live in, or you just are even more fascinated by it. But you're able to just learn more about the world and just more about places that you'd be passionate about going to. And really quickly, I did want to say, I am part of the Foreign Service Internship Program Alumni Board. So around the end of summer, kind of coming into August, since the applications are due in October, and we also always invite people applying for unpaid internships too. But we have our own little email that I can put in here where we answer any questions that you have about being an intern or the specific internship. We will look over your essays for you, and if it comes to it, we'll help you prep for any types of interviews. Once you get accepted, if you have questions about like what to wear or what it's like living in DC or what it's like working in the building, we answer all these questions. So I'm just gonna type it really quickly. for you, and I'm happy to answer any questions, but just my 2 internship experiences. I hope it at least kind of open your eyes to just what the daily workday looks like, and just living having these 2 different experiences. So thank you both, Chan and Laura, so much, and thank you guys for listening. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Olivia. We're so proud of you. You're such an inspiration, and I really hope you join the Foreign Service someday. Do we want to take a few questions about internships now while Olivia's on? Does anybody have any questions for Olivia?
Hi, yeah, I have a quick question, if I may. I just wondered if you could repeat the details about the book on the website that you were discussing, the internship book. I missed it. I'm sorry.
Definitely. I'm trying to see if I can find it here. But there is an internship handbook that the State Department has that they go over in detail the different internships. And I think if you go to student resources on the State Department website, but it's just a little handbook that shows just a variety of majors and offices that really look for applicants with those specific majors or language capabilities. But then, like I said, it also goes into the details for, the virtual internships, the unpaid internships and the paid internships, as well as fellows. So pretty much what Laura covered, but just into more detail about application requirements and an overview of what the job would entail.
Thank you. That's perfect.
Great. And I'd just like to emphasize what Olivia said, that all academic backgrounds are welcome in the State Department. We really cover everything you could possibly think of. So, if you're a chemical engineering or science major, we have an entire bureau that focuses on non-proliferation. And so there's a lot of technical issues related to nuclear weapons. We have people who are following gas and pipeline issues. That's also very technical. The Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs does all kinds of work with cultural property. So somebody who's studying, ancient cultures from some part of the world could have a very useful background for that. Any sort of language or regional study. I've known people in the Foreign Service who studied everything from musical theater to engineering to law, you name it, and everything is helpful. We do it all. One of my favorite experiences was when I was working on UNESCO issues, UN Education, Science, Culture Organization, and I had the culture portfolio. There were a lot of conventions under play, and one of them was the Convention for Underwater Cultural Heritage, which almost sounds a little funny. People, when I was in college, would always joke about, oh, do they offer the underwater basket weaving degree? Do people still say that in school? Like, are you majoring in underwater basket weaving? So I heard about this underwater cultural heritage convention, and it actually turned out to be very interesting. It included a lot of protection of shipwrecks, which is often a grave of where soldiers, are laying in rest. And so there are very interesting issues about territorial boundaries and how far out is international waters, or how much belongs exclusively to a country. And one day I called up an office, and the officer answered and said, Dan Smith, shipwrecks officer. And I thought, wow, we have an officer in the State Department who exclusively handles shipwrecks. Like, I actually thought that was really cool. We also had a turtles officer too. This was in the Bureau of Ocean Environment and Science. So again, any specific interest you have, any background, trust me, the State Department is working on it, and there's an internship everywhere. So thanks for highlighting that, Olivia. Thanks for telling everyone about your experience. I appreciate it so much. Okay, I'm gonna go back to sharing my screen and talk a little bit about careers as a Foreign Service officer and Foreign Service specialist. All right, where were we? Okay, so there's Olivia again with her supernatural abilities at the Capitol. Thank you, Olivia, so much. Okay, let's talk a little bit about becoming a Foreign Service officer. That's what I do. Foreign Service officers need to be worldwide available. You need to be willing to serve anywhere in the world. And the United States diplomatic service is just about everywhere, except North Korea, Iran. We are temporarily not in Yemen or Syria, but we have representation in every other country in the world. So that is a key thing to understand if you're interested in a career as a Foreign Service officer. There are 5 types: consular, economic, management, political, and public diplomacy. Each of them kind of speak for themselves. Olivia described a lot to you about consular work. That's processing visas and doing American citizen services. Economic officers tend to look at economic trends in countries, those gas and energy pipelines that I talked about, telecommunications, currency issues. Management officers are the ones running the embassy. So I heard several of you say you're majoring in, I think, logistics or supply chain. That would be a great background as a management officer, because these are the people who lead large teams. They're in charge of the money. So if you think about everything it takes to run your university, that's what it takes at an embassy too. So the management officers are overseeing the building management, the personnel, the payroll, you know, the holiday schedule, the motor pool, the housing, all of those logistics issues. So really very, very critical field. Political officers are following the political developments. That could be internal in the country, external, looking at the bilateral relationship between them and the US. And public diplomacy officers, that's my field, are handling the education, culture, and press. So handling all the media interviews, running all the social media sites. What's not to love about that? Get paid to run social media sites. I rather enjoyed that myself. And public diplomacy officers are responsible for knowing all of the strategic goals of the mission and advancing or attempting to advance those goals with the foreign publics. That's what public diplomacy is. So I would say that public diplomacy and consular officers tend to have the most contact with members of the host nation outside of the embassy. Management is going to be a little more internal to the embassy, and then political and economic is going to be a mix of both. The process to join the Foreign Service, the gateway, is very fair and egalitarian, very open. It is to sign up, register for, and take the Foreign Service Officer Test, the FSOT. And you can register at this site here, pearsonview.com. That's a third-party contractor that offers all kinds of tests. And you just need to be age 20 to 58 when you register, and you do need to be a US citizen to register to take the test. There is no fee to register. There is a fee if you don't show up. So if you register, definitely show up. The next test is going to be in June of 2021, so coming up fairly soon. We offer the test 3 times a year, and you can take it once per year. The registration period is April 22nd to May 27th. I have a feeling that falls right around your finals, since I know a lot of the semesters are shortened. But if you want to start pursuing a career in the Foreign Service, this is where you begin. If June isn't the right time frame, the test will be offered again in the fall, and then 3 times in 2022. And there is a wealth of information here on this careers.state.gov website on preparing for the test. There's a section on job knowledge, which is basically US government, history and culture, world affairs, world geography. You can study some of that. It also helps to have been someone who's just been interested and curious about the world, who's read a lot of magazines, who's stayed informed about the world. You know, that can help out on the test as well. There's a whole section on English grammar and usage. If you feel that's not your strongest area, you can study for that. We recommend getting Elements of Style by Strunk and White, brushing up on that. And then there's also a timed essay. And we hear from a lot of people that that's stressful to have a timed essay. There is a reason for that, because when you're a diplomat overseas, you do have to write quickly. Something might happen in a country, the president might visit, or there's an important meeting or a coup, and the Foreign Service officers have got to be able to write something up within an hour and send it up the chain, get it approved, and send it back to Washington. And just like Olivia said, sometimes the products she worked on were seen by the Secretary of State. Same thing for Foreign Service officers. So that's the reason that the essay is timed. 2 things to know about if you do register for the Foreign Service Officer test is that, first of all, you do need to choose which of the 5 tracks you would want to serve in. And we realize that's a big choice. But our intake process is governed by how many people we need in each of these fields. So do some research on that. There's a quiz on our app that you can take. You can talk to me, you can talk to Olivia, find out which of these 5 you think is the best fit for you, because once you register and put that in your registration, it's quite hard to change later. And then the second thing to know is with the registration, we do require some rather in-depth personal narratives. They're basically short essays. There's usually 6. I don't know exactly what the questions are. They don't give me that information, and it changes every time. But most likely it will be questions such as, give me an example of a time you showed leadership, or you showed cross-cultural competency, or an example of how you improved something. So these are going to be essays of about 250 words each. And this is your chance to highlight, to slip in there examples of anything that you think would show that you would be a good foreign service officer. So language skills, living in a foreign country, demonstrating cross-cultural skills, anything in the international arena. Those things are not required, but it doesn't hurt to have them. And so the personal narratives is a good place to highlight that. I unfortunately am not allowed to review personal narratives, just out of fairness to everyone, but you can have mentors. The Scholarship Center, faculty, family members can review those personal narratives with you. So if you do decide to register, bear those things in mind. It's not something you can get done in a day. So you don't want to start on May 26th if the deadline is May 27th. But yeah, that's the process. So if you pass the Foreign Service Officer test, the next stage is the Qualifications Evaluation Panel. And that's where the Board of Examiners, Foreign Service Officers like myself, read the essay, read the personal narratives, and decide which candidacies will advance to the next step. And if someone is selected to go to the next step, then the next stage is the oral assessment. That's an all-day event, usually in Washington, D.C., in person with a group exercise, some one-on-one exercises. I won't get too into that today. Just bear in mind, anyone who makes it to that step, we do have about a 90-minute webinar for anybody who's invited to that. So you would definitely have an opportunity to hear very in-depth what that's about. Just to mention, we have not been able to hold these oral assessments because of the pandemic. We just were not able to find a way to replicate it virtually in a way that we thought would be fair. So we are a little bit behind. When it becomes safe again, we're going to try to have a surge. But for anyone who's interested in the Foreign Service, I would say take the test as soon as possible. If you take it in June and you haven't heard, you can take it again a year later and you can have 2 candidacies. That's fine. There's no problem with that. We are going to have a little bit of a backlog because of the pandemic. We were bringing people on in about 18 months. Probably it's going to be more like 18 to 24 months. So just bear that in mind. So if you pass the oral assessment, the good news is that day you're given a conditional offer of employment. And the other news is that on that day, you also start the process to get a top secret security clearance, a medical clearance, and a suitability review. So those are individual specific processes looking at a person's life background, hopefully no felonies, a good financial record. We like to tell everyone that according to federal law, marijuana is not legal. So if you are interested in a federal career, having smoked marijuana in the past is not a showstopper, but it would be advisable to stop that now. And so the further it is in the past, the better. With medical clearances, we're looking for folks who are able to serve worldwide and who might be in some places that do not have access to emergency medicine quickly, where you might need 4 to 6 hours before you can get to a trauma center or to emergency medicine. So we wouldn't want to bring someone in who could potentially face a life-threatening situation very quickly if they're serving somewhere extremely remote. But again, those are individual specific, and those are up to our diplomatic security office and our Med office. So that's Foreign Service Officer, and I'm happy to take questions at the end. Let me jump ahead to Foreign Service Specialist. So these are fields that people don't often associate with diplomacy. Most people, when we think about diplomacy, we picture somebody at the UN or negotiating on TV or something like that. But an American embassy or consulate needs all of the same support personnel and experts that any other organization would need. And especially in the field of security, we need more experts than most people. For any of you who've ever been to an American embassy or consulate, I'm pretty certain you dealt with heavy security, and we do need Americans with top secret clearances to take those jobs. So the key thing to know about Foreign Service Specialists is you do not take the Foreign Service Officer test. All of these fields require specialized education and/or specialized experience. One of our greatest needs is for information management specialists. So anyone with a 2-year IT degree can apply for this. This is a great opportunity to become part of the Foreign Service with just a 2-year degree. Information management specialists run the networks in the embassy, whether that's classified or unclassified. They set up accounts. They might support the ambassador. There will be local nationals assisting, but we've got to have at least 2 Americans with the top secret clearance working in information management. And these could be folks who help the president with White House communications if the president comes on a visit. So very cool opportunity there. Some of our other opportunities are office management. We equate that to being an executive assistant. Our ambassadors and deputy chief of mission need people who have experience as executive assistants. Facility managers, we're looking for a background in facility management or a degree in facility management or mechanical engineering. Security engineers and security technicians need to have a background in electrical engineering. If you've been into an embassy or if you've seen a movie that has all kinds of bollards and sally ports going up and down when the cars are coming in and surveillance cameras, these are the folks who are handling that, the security engineers and the security technicians. So they are critical to keeping us safe. And I'll skip ahead to special agents. We do have a law enforcement wing in the State Department. It's called Diplomatic Security. They are federal law enforcement officers, just like the FBI or the Customs Border Patrol. So that is a really cool opportunity to be a law enforcement professional and a diplomat at the same time. And that opportunity opens usually once a year, and they do not require specialized experience. They require a college degree, a certain level of physical fitness. You have to pass a test, and you have to be age 37 or younger unless you're a veteran. And they say they like a year of experience in law enforcement or investigations, but it's not required. So special agent can be a great career as well. And there are directions for how to apply for all of these right here at this site, careers.state.gov. Okay, let me talk quickly about benefits, and then I'm going to talk about the Consular Fellows Program, and then we'll get to questions. I know we're at an hour. Thank you, everyone. This is the good part, though. Who doesn't love benefits? So first of all, you get to see the world. But some of the other benefits we have are extra pay allowances. If you serve in a hardship post or danger pay post, you'll get more money. So for example, when I served in Afghanistan, I got an additional 70% of my salary, kind of a whopping number, because I volunteered to serve in Afghanistan. And that's what this photo is. We're in Helmand province, flying over poppy fields. There is an option of student loan repayment. That has been renewed every year for the last 20 years. And that usually applies for people who are at hardship posts. So, you know, if you're in France or Germany, not going to be eligible for that. If you have volunteered to go to a post rated 15% or higher, then you could have the opportunity to participate in this. The amount varies from year to year. I believe it's about $8,000 to $12,000 per year. So over a 5-year period of time, people can put a real dent in their student loan repayment with that. We have federal retirement benefits. If you serve 20 years in the Foreign Service and reach the age of 50, then you can retire with a pension. You know, pensions are kind of disappearing in the US, so that's a nice benefit. We have the thrift savings plan, which is the equivalent of a 401k that you might see in the corporate sector. And the State Department does match some of the contributions to that. So great investment plan there. All the life, health, vision, and dental insurance are majorly funded by the federal government. Everybody does have to pay some of their premiums, depending on whether you're single or a family, but very, very good health insurance and other insurance. Overseas, your housing is provided for you free. So you don't have to pay anything for housing, and it's furnished. That's a nice benefit. And if you have a family, if you have children from kindergarten through 12th grade, the US government will pay for them to go to private schools overseas, which can be a tremendous benefit. I had a friend who had both of his sons actually go to boarding school in Switzerland because he was serving in Libya and there was no high school there. So his sons each got a $200,000 education at a premier boarding school in Switzerland. So that's a tremendous benefit. We cover relocation expenses. You get paid annual and sick leave. In between tours, you get special home leave, which has to be spent in the US. Really exciting development. As of October 1st of last year, the federal government has paid parental leave. Isn't that fantastic? We didn't think we'd ever see that. And it's very generous. So 3 months for both parents, or if it's 2 moms, 2 dads, foster parents, adoptive parents, three months for both parents. And so we're just really excited about this. This is a fantastic benefit. across the federal government, but that does include the Foreign Service. And as I mentioned earlier, there's some employment programs for spouses. A lot of people in families want to be in a 2-income family. And so we do set aside jobs at the embassy that only the spouses of Foreign Service personnel can apply for. So great package of benefits there. Okay, and finally, my last opportunity, and I think that this is a great program for a lot of you because of the languages I heard that all of you speak. We have a special program called the Consular Fellows Program. And this is basically a temporary appointment of up to 5 years serving as a consular officer. And the reason we created this is we were struggling to get enough Foreign Service officers to learn the languages we need people to have to carry out our consular operations. So this program is open to fluent speakers of Mandarin Chinese. I know there's a lot of you on this Zoom today. Portuguese, there's a couple of you. Arabic, I didn't hear any Arabic. And Spanish, quite a few Spanish speakers as well. And the goal here is the State Department very wisely thought, hey, we've got lots of American citizens who know these languages already. Let's create an employment mechanism for them to become consular fellows and use that language. So the big benefit of Consular Fellows Program is you are guaranteed to go to a country using the language that you speak. Whereas in the Foreign Service, you have to be worldwide available. So you can wind up like me. I speak fluent German, and I've been in the Foreign Service for 20 years, never been to a German-speaking country. You know, if you speak Portuguese and you become a consular fellow, you're going to Brazil. You know, if you speak Arabic, we know the countries where that's spoken. And so that's the exciting part is, you know, you'll get to use your language. As I mentioned, it is a limited non-career appointment up to 5 years. When consular fellows serve overseas, they're treated exactly like consular officers and get all of those same benefits: the furnished housing, the health insurance, the schooling for children. And actually all consular fellows can participate in the student loan repayment program. So we see a lot of people doing this right after they leave school or once they have retired. So yeah, you're conducting consular work, adjudicating visas and passport interviews. The hiring process is all outlined here at this link, careers.state.gov/CA. You have to take a test at Pearson VUE called Understanding Regulations. And it's just basically making sure that you would be able to understand, you know, tax forms, visa forms, that sort of thing. And that at a certain point in the process, you do a telephonic language test, and they have a way of administering the written test as well. And then you do need to achieve, again, a certain score in the language to be considered fluent enough to take the job, and also get a security and medical clearance. So this is a great new opportunity that we have. I'm often asked, is there a way to go from being a consular fellow to being a Foreign Service officer? And the simple answer is no, there is not a formal way. We have seen anecdotally that many people who served as consular fellows for 2 to 5 years are being successful in getting into the Foreign Service, if that's what they want. Not everybody who's a consular fellow wants to be a Foreign Service officer because you have to be worldwide available. Whereas with a consular fellow, you can be much more selective about where you serve because it's related to the languages. But this is a great opportunity, and many of you on this Zoom today have these languages, so I would encourage you to pursue that. And just to mention again, you can have multiple candidacies going at the same time. So you can take the Foreign Service Officer test to become a Foreign Service Officer. You could also apply for Consular Fellows in one language or two, whichever ones you have. You could have 2 or 3 candidacies going at the same time. That's perfectly okay. And we totally allow that. We totally like that. So again, thanks for joining today. There's my email if you have any specific questions. I always like to close by saying the Foreign Service is a calling. It is a profession. It's not a 9 to 5 job. You know, you do sometimes have to work evenings or weekends, but you get to have exciting opportunities and follow your dreams. For me, one of my dreams was always to get to the Arctic Circle, and I only achieved that 4 years ago when I went to that Sami festival. I went up into North Norway, which is in the Arctic Circle, and you can see the grin on my face there. I was really excited about that. So I've still got some things on my list out there, some dreams I want to achieve, and the Foreign Service has been a great way to do that. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen, and I'm happy to take any questions. Let me look at the chat and see if there have been any questions there. Okay, a couple folks had to go. I totally understand. All right. Anybody have any questions? Ask me anything. It's like a Reddit. I'm not involved in the hiring process, so you can feel safe asking me anything. Thank you again to Livia for presenting with me. That was fantastic. Okay, I see a question from Delaney. What about late career opportunities to join the Department of State? I'm not quite sure what is meant by late career opportunities. Does that relate to age, Delaney?
Yeah, so if you
Okay.
currently have a plan going on right now for what you want to do, but say, hey, I want to completely switch over to, working as a foreign services officer, do they, prioritize students coming out of graduation programs over, late transfers if you're maybe in your mid-30s or something?
Okay, thanks for clarifying. That's a great question. So we have people joining from about age 22. If you take the test at 20, by the time you can get in, you're going to be 22. And we do have people joining up to age 59. If you can take the test at 58, by the time you get in, you're going to be 59. We're always trying to figure out what's the average age. It has hovered between 31 and 35 in recent years. So that tells you there are a lot of people coming in right out of school. There are also people coming in their 50s. And I will tell you from my experience, it is quite common for people to come in after having other careers. Myself, for example, I worked for 10 years before I joined the Foreign Service. I was in the Army for 6 years, and then I was a corporate recruiter for 3 years. So I was 31 when I joined the State Department. I think that helped. It wasn't required. There were people who joined with me who had just come out of school. There were a couple of them. There were also people in their 50s. And every time we have a new class start, we survey them and we ask them, how did you find out about the State Department? And we hear from people all the time who say, oh, I met this diplomat in residence 10 years ago or 12 years ago and did something else with my life. And then, once my kids were out of the home or I had enough of being an attorney, I decided to pursue the Foreign Service. So that is fine. That's strongly encouraged. If you do join in 10 years, just say you heard from Laura Gritz, okay?
Great, thank you.
I hope that answers your question. Any other questions? Thank you,
yeah,
Delaney.
I actually have a question. For like a foreign service officer, of course this is different for everybody, but in general, how often are you abroad versus in the States?
Thank you, Taylor. That's a great question. So the first 2 assignments for a foreign service officer are going to be overseas, and those are going to be 2 years each. Because when officers first join, we want everyone to have a variety of experiences to serve in 2 different continents. New officers will be taught a language. And so yeah, those first 2 assignments are going to be 2 years. Moving after about 4 years, officers are considered for what we call tenure. It's kind of like a university. And if people have met all the career requirements and have performed well and are granted tenure, sometimes they'll elect to stay a 3rd year at the 2nd post. But typically it's going to be 2 two-year tours. And at that point, somebody becomes a mid-level officer and you really have a lot of leeway about what you want to do with your career. When I joined, we were always encouraged to come back to Washington within the first 5 to 8 years so that you could really understand the inner workings of the department, if you will. But people don't have to. So I came back after 5 years and I lived 3 years in Washington, D.C. I have known people who waited longer, who served overseas for 12 or 15 years. Most people want to come back to the US at some point, no matter how much you love living overseas. It's nice to come back, and a lot of people want their kids to experience a US school in some way. It is much more expensive because when you're back in Washington, D.C., you don't get all those benefits. You don't get the free housing and the private school paid for. So it can be a little bit of a financial hardship. Most of our assignments are 2 or 3 years long. In the more hardship places, they're 2 years. And that may seem short, but I can tell you, it feels like a long time in some places. And anybody who really wants to stay a 3rd year in a 2-year post can usually get that extension. And then assignments in more advanced countries are 3 years. And it's pretty hard to get an extension there unless there's some kind of circumstance like a health issue or a kid graduating from school, because we don't want people spending their whole careers in the non-hardship posts. We want it to be spread around evenly. But I have really seen that in my career, in my 20 years, that people can chart their own course. So I have friends I joined with who spent most of their career in Western Hemisphere. I have friends who spent most of their career in EAP. I was somebody who wanted to see the world. So I served in Asia, I served in Africa, I served in Afghanistan, I served in the US. That's what I wanted to do. I never made it to Western Hemisphere. But I think once you hit that mid-level, you do have some say in it. And we used to have rules limiting how long you could spend in Washington, D.C. It was 5 years. It was a 5-year limit. And that's recently been done away with. The State Department has tried to build in a lot of workplace flexibilities to take away barriers that were causing people to leave. A lot of times people were in a 2-income family, or maybe they have a special needs child and they, for whatever reason, they needed to stay in Washington, D.C. for 7 or 8 years for family stability. Well, that's allowed now. We've done a lot, to make it easier to give people workplace flexibilities, to do what's right for their family. So that's kind of a long answer to your short question, but I hope that answers your question. Let me look in the chat. Oh, do I have children? No, just the feline kind. But I have a lot of friends with families. I think the Foreign Service is very family friendly. The bigger your family, the bigger your house. And kids get those great educational benefits. I've known people with 6 or 9 children, so the government pays for all those flights, pays for all of that education. Certainly a family needs to be resilient. The spouse and the children need to have a positive attitude about moving every 3 years. That can be hard on children, but it can also be very exciting, and that becomes part of their identity for the rest of their lives. But yeah, my children are just the one who was meowing earlier. I put her away in the back room while Olivia was talking.
Yeah, I was just thinking about the adjustment to the process. I'm a single mom and I have 3 kids, and I have actually talked to them for the past few years that we're going to be living outside the U.S. I don't know how or what's going to happen, but this sounds like a good opportunity.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Brandy. And I didn't really get into it, but one advantage is in a lot of countries of the world, the salary that you make is enough that you can hire a nanny or household help and hire them at what's a very good wage. I had a part-time housekeeper in Thailand, and she made as much money as a teacher or a police officer. So, I mean, I'm certainly not talking about like any kind of abusive labor practices. The diplomats always pay, the correct wage and follow rules about overtime and things like that. But I have known a lot of single parents who found the Foreign Service to be the best thing that ever could have happened to them, because they were able to hire a nanny. And there is a visa class that the nanny can come with you to the US and can travel with you. It's not as common anymore, but I worked for one ambassador who had employed the same nanny / housekeeper for 20 years. And the lady was from Thailand. She would go home every summer. But those kind of relationships develop. So yeah, I would encourage you to pursue it, and your kids could have some fantastic opportunities. I see, are there any opportunities, internships or options on the West Coast? There are a handful. Most of the Foreign Service is going to be overseas at embassies and consulates. The next highest group is going to be in Washington, D.C. We do have some opportunities for Foreign Service on the West Coast. We have a diplomatic security office in San Francisco. We have an office of foreign missions in Los Angeles. So that is an office that handles the accreditation of all the foreign diplomats. There's just quite a few, consulate of Italy or consulate of China in San Francisco or California or somewhere like that. So somebody in the American diplomatic service has to work with all of those people. We do have the 16 people in my job that's being a diplomat in residence. So there are 2 in California, 1 in Southern and Northern California. I myself am from the West Coast. I'm from Seattle, and Albuquerque was the closest I could get. So I would say there's a handful of opportunities on the West Coast, but not many. More East Coast centric and definitely overseas. Opportunities for international students. In terms of employment and internships, I'm sorry, unfortunately, no, those are for US citizens. However, the State Department has all kinds of programs supporting international exchange, bringing students to the US. So Fulbright, of course, is the biggest one. An embassy would run that program. There's another program called the International Visitor Leadership Program, Maybe some of the faculty members have met people on that. So that's for foreign nationals who are mid-career professionals to come to the US on a 3-week, basically study tour. And they'll usually visit 3 different US cities. And then every embassy has a pool of money they can use to send people on exchange programs. But I would say the start point for any international student would be more of interacting with the embassy of whatever country that you're from or where you hold citizenship, because that's what we're all about. That's what diplomacy is about. It's about bringing people close together. So there are tons and tons of opportunities. My particular mandate is to talk about careers and internships, which is for US citizens. Okay, I don't see anything else in the chat. Any other questions? I know it's getting late. People probably need to go to work, study, go to class, go to dinner, catch up on some Netflix.
I have another question, if that's okay.
Sure, that's fine.
I speak English and I'm learning Japanese, and I'm starting to think about learning about another 3rd language. And personally, I would love to learn German, but I figure that since I'm a Japanese major, it'd probably be helpful to learn something like Chinese or Korean to stay with the focus on Asia. So my question is there benefits in learning a European language and Asian language, or should I just focus on Asian languages?
Well, that's a good question. First of all, you don't have to know any foreign language to join the Foreign Service. It helps. But my own sister got into the Foreign Service and she doesn't have any language. The State Department taught her Spanish. So it's not a requirement. I think when it comes to languages, follow your heart, learn the languages that you like. In terms of long-term strategic planning, you might want to think about languages that are spoken in more than one country. And I say that as a person who studied Icelandic, Norwegian, Dari, and Thai, all spoken in one country. I should have picked up Spanish or Chinese or French somewhere along the way. So that's one thing to think about. In the Foreign Service, if a position is what we call language designated, then the Foreign Service will send the officer or the specialist to school. We have a huge language school called the Foreign Service Institute where they teach 600 languages. And so I've spent 2 years of my 20-year career learning languages. Now, if you're in the Foreign Service and you're able to achieve a good score in a language like Japanese or Korean or Chinese, that can definitely open doors for you. When it comes time to bid, if the position doesn't have language training built in, or if somebody had to curtail, maybe they had a family situation and they need somebody quickly, so they're looking at a candidate who doesn't speak Chinese and a candidate who does speak Chinese, then it's definitely helpful. But I couldn't say anything specific about one over the other. And even though I got made fun of for learning Icelandic, it's only spoken by 350,000 people in the world. My thought was that, well, the State Department wants to have 3 language trained officers there. And I'm fortunate to be one of them, and I'm going to spend 10 months learning this language and give it my best. And it turned out to be really critical because there's only so far you can rely on translators. If the Prime Minister gives a speech and he uses a word that maybe he's furious or he's angry or he's irritated or he's annoyed, that might get lost in translation. But if you have a language trained American, then you know what he said. Maybe you're not able to understand what exactly the Prime Minister said in her remarks, but you can get the gist of it. So I think there's value to learning every language, including the ancient languages. I think there's value to learning all of them. So hope that helps. Just follow your heart, learn a language that interests you. Maybe we could take 1 or 2 more questions and then people probably got to go. Chan, how are we doing? I see it's 5:20.
I was
How about
going to
one
go
last
ahead and ask a
question?
question.
Armando.
Yes, Armando.
Great.
I was going to say, what do you think that the State Department is doing to ensure equal job opportunities for minority students?
Did you say for minority students?
For students of groups of minorities and just those in general.
Yeah, that was a great question, and that's very much a priority issue. The bureau that I work in is focused on that, and that's one of the reasons that I took this job. So certainly the Pickering and Rangel fellowships look very closely at the diversity of the cohorts of the fellows to make sure that we're bringing in a diverse set of students. Also the paid internship program. And that is one of the reasons that we want to expand the number of paid internships we have, because we feel like unpaid internships are a barrier and obviously favor folks from more privileged backgrounds, which can be people from, from any ethnicity. But we would like to have more paid internships to eliminate those barriers so that we can have more students coming in. Our goal, as Secretary Blinken said, is to have a foreign service that looks like America, and we are not there yet. We've acknowledged that we have some problems, and I'm proud to be working on some of the solutions to those problems. But I feel excited by some of the things that he said, what we're hearing from the Hill about helping us with that. So part of it is recruitment. We're also looking at some of our practices, some of our, things that have maybe discouraged retention of persons of color or of women. And that goes to what I was talking about earlier, where we instituted more workplace flexibilities. We tried to take away rules that were maybe driving women out of the workforce because they tend to have more family responsibilities. We've expanded our telework in the last year, and all of those flexibilities are meant to be more inclusive of all of our workforce so that we don't lose people just because we put up some barriers that really weren't necessary. So we don't have all the answers, we don't have everything right, but those are some of the things that we're doing. And I really hope that you, Armando, that everybody on here will take a look at State Department opportunities, whether it's an internship, the fellowships, or careers. I am available as a resource. And again, at ASU, you have a fantastic scholarship center. I think it's called the Lorraine Henderson Scholarship Center. So I've talked with the director of that, and they are available. And as Olivia said, she's part of a panel. Anyone who can help review statements, practice interviews, definitely take them up on those resources, because people at other schools are doing that. They have those resources, so take advantage of those resources. And I'm here for you as well. Thanks for that question, Armando. Okay, I guess that wraps it up. Thank you, everyone. I totally understand that some people had to go, but thanks to all of you who stuck on. Thank you, Chan, for organizing this. It was a great group of people. Thank you, Olivia, for speaking. I hope I get to see you for real again sometime in 2021 or 2022. And feel free to reach out to me if you have any additional questions or anything you want to ask privately. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much.
Olivia. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Bye. I'm going to wait for everyone to go.